Hey there everyone, this is Destro, and I got something a little bit different and a little bit special for you guys today. This is all part of a big collab project organized by my good friend Fiverr over at Sugar Candy Miniatures. Make sure to check them out once this is done. But before we get into that, new channel art! That's right, look at me being all professional. Really excited to have these going forward. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the project. Today, we're going to be painting some clowns. This is the theme of this collab project. We're doing a Goblin clown army, and this is totally outside my wheelhouse. I've never really chosen to paint clowns or anything clown related or circus themed or anything like that. I've never painted any goblins. I'm not a big, orcs and goblins sort of guy. So this was kind of an interesting challenge for me coming in to try and figure out how I wanted to approach the theme of clowns. Today, I'm painting the Arachna Cauldron and the Boggle Eye from the Gobblepalooza set. Fiverr made up an army list and we all picked what offit we wanted to paint, and I took the Cauldron and the Boggle Eye. I figured, I'd be able to do something fun with those, even if I wasn't sure exactly what. And this is the story of how I decided what. The hardest part of this for me was putting myself into somebody else's headspace, so to speak. This isn't my wheelhouse, but it's definitely Fiverr's. They do all kinds of really weird, really cool, unconventional kind of color schemes for their armies. They've got a bunch of, I think it's a Blood Bowl team that's painted like a 90s bowling alley kind of thing with that horrible carpet that they all had for some reason. They've got some Tau that I believe are painted like key lime pie, I think is the theme. A lot of food themes. Anyways, beside the point, it's super cool. I love that they do all of this really wacky stuff with their miniatures. I love that people can approach this hobby from a different angle and come in and just do something really cool that no one else is doing in this space. And getting into that mindset of trying to do something, like using techniques and things that I already know, of course, but that nobody has ever really done before, and that nobody would really think to do outside of some sort of challenge like this, it kept me up. It kept me up for a few nights. And funny enough, the Boggle Eye was the first miniature I picked. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do some sort of black and white kind of carnival magician sort of mesmerist type thing with the Boggle Eye. I'm gonna do a monochrome thing for that little dude. And I was really excited to get the Boggle Eye and to start painting him. But while the miniatures were on their way being shipped to me, I was thinking, how am I going to do the cauldron? What am I going to do for the cauldron? How am I gonna paint this thing to fit this? It's this weird little spidery cauldron thing. Maybe I can make this kind of green smoke coming out of the top. And then one day, when I was lying there in bed thinking about how to paint this miniature, I just sat upright like popcorn. And it was kind of funny how I had that one idea, and then I was really excited after that to render it down and see it in miniature form. Paint that classic red and white little popcorn basket kind of thing, do a bunch of yellows and browns and whites for the smoke coming out the top so the smoke would look like popcorn. I actually went out and I bought the contrast yellow paint, specifically because I wanted to use it to try and paint this popcorn. Unfortunately, over top of the gray primer that I used, that did end up looking sort of greenish in the recesses. I had to play with the popcorn smoke a lot in order to get it to look the way I really wanted it to. And, painting the red and white stripes freehand was certainly a choice, but I made it work, and it looks really cool in the end. Speaking of the end, stick around to the end of the video to see a few shots of the finished army. I also have links to everyone else in the collab in the description, and if you've liked this video so far, then please consider giving it a like or subscribing to the channel for more content. Alright, onto the Boggle Eye. Now he is a goblin, and goblins should be green according to 90s Games Workshop paint names, so skin tone was already decided for me. One decision down. he's got a couple little minions with him, so they get to be green too. Now, I already knew that I wanted to do a sort of white and black monochrome kind of thing for much of this guy's robes, so I started with deck tan for the parts that would be white, and a dark gray for the parts that would be black. Second decision down. Now, at about this point, you might be wondering how a monochrome goblin and a really bright popcorn cauldron, and in fact all of the other extremely disparate and brightly colored things painted by the other hobbyists, are going to look cohesive together in a finished army. And that's something that I was a little bit concerned about as well, myself, but there is an adage that things that are based the same way are going to look pretty good together in the end. And you'll see whether that's true or not when we get there. But that is something that we were testing out with this. Fiverr is going to do all of the basing on a video for their channel, and so I'm not doing any basing at all for these miniatures. You won't see me do any basing, and that's why. As I started painting the face on this mini, one of the things that I knew that I wanted to do was have this look like sort of messily applied grease paint. These guys are goblins. They're not going to do this perfectly. And so I painted the whole face green beforehand and then came in afterwards with some off-white, applying that in a sort of messy and haphazard manner so that hopefully there'd still be a little bit of green around the edges and it would look like face paint applied to a goblin. The black robe was supposed to be part of the whole carnival mesmerist thing, so I knew I wanted some little symbols and, you know, sort of swirls and things on that, so I had to make sure to highlight all of the black of the robe before I started painting those on, in order to make sure that the robe would look properly highlighted even once the freehand and things was on there. Because it wouldn't be a Lich King project without freehand, right? I did go pretty strong on the highlights on the robe, because I did end up using some contrast black paint to sort of dull it back down and hide the strength of the highlights a little bit. I like this method of painting black a lot. I think it works pretty well. I've used it in the past and I will use it again in the future. Oh, and speaking of contrast, that's what I used to paint the wooden parts of the staff as well. That was a pretty simple, quick job with some wildwood. Now for the big guy, the Boggle-Eye, I didn't do a ton of extra clown makeup for him. He got some red on his lips, but not much else. I think he came out looking a little bit like Jigsaw, actually, the Saw villain, which I suppose is appropriate. He's kind of a clown. But the little guys, they needed to be clowns too, so I used some red on them as well for the noses, and some blue so that they would be sad clowns, because they look kind of sad. My original plan for the freehand on this cloak had been some sort of big swirly optical illusion type thing, but with how small this guy is and how hunched over he is and his weird hood needing a bunch of sort of Tim Burton kind of spirally line things up the side of that, it didn't really come out the way that I had wanted it to, the way that I had originally envisioned it. I think it came out alright. I ended up just painting a bunch of little sort of weird designs and sort of reminiscent of optical illusions wherever possible, a bunch of swirls and lines and boxes and things. It worked okay. It wasn't what I had envisioned, but it worked okay. If I could change one thing about this model, though, it would definitely be bringing that cloak as close to my original vision as possible. Oh, and oddly, there isn't actually a huge amount of metal on this model. He's got like a couple of little dangly bangles and a knife and stuff, but yeah, mostly no metal. So, if you don't like painting metallics, this is one of the minis for you. Just a few last things to talk about. After the miniature was finished, I did decide to come back in and re-highlight the skin a little bit. I felt the highlights on it weren't noticeable enough, so I added some more. And then there was the smoke coming off of his staff. This is another place that I ended up drawing a little bit of odd inspiration from. See, I was looking at this guy and his little swirly eyes there, and that made me think back to a very odd but rather memorable movie called We're Back, a dinosaur story, and it had this villain in it named Professor Screw-Eye, and that's one of the things that this little Boggle-Eye reminds me of, is that villain, who had a circus, for one thing, and who also had a scene where he used a bunch of sort of lighting and smoke effects and stuff, and there was a really heavy usage of green, or at least there was in my mind. And so I decided to go with green smoke for this guy, a really sort of bright, villainous, poisonous green, because he reminded me of the villain from an animated movie that I saw probably 20 years ago. Now that's the last thing I wanted to talk about where I found inspiration for my miniatures. But wait, there's more. Even though it's almost over, happy Pride, everyone. Pride Month means different things to different people. For me, this is a time to show my love and support for those of my friends and family who are part of the LGBT+ community. There's a lot of great ways to celebrate, be it painting a mini in pride colors like the Fabulous Marines Project, supporting a charity, or participating in a collaboration with your fellow hobbyists. We're all hobbyists, and it's important to be welcoming to other people in this hobby. For that reason, the theme we've chosen to represent Pride is belonging. No matter who you are, where you are, or how you identify, we wanted to create an army that celebrates and includes you, the person watching this video. And we have a plan. You see, Warhammer's Gloomspite Gets goblins tend to travel in hordes. What that means is, even with our combined collaborative resources, there's plenty of room left for even more goblins. Everyone who took part in this collab got the same prompt I'm giving you. Clowns. That's it. No color limitations, no specific paints, nothing. Just clowns. I've shown you how I've painted my models, and I've hopefully shown that you can do this even if it's totally different from your normal hobby fare, so now we want to see how you paint yours. Together, we've put together an army that anyone can join. An army of clowns to make people smile. We invite you to join us, paint up a clown, and share it with the world. If you post it with the hashtag #ClownGobbos, Fiverr will share their favorites on social media. With that, that's the end of the video, so thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again next time. I've been Destro. You've been great.